Today we're talking about the Premier League title race. It's getting ridiculous now. We have learnt so much in the last week across the Christmas period about the likes of Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City and even Aston Villa if you throw them in the mix. The Christmas period has actually given more information in this title race than it has in many, many years. Obviously, the likes of Liverpool and City have dominated the title race in the last 4, 5, 6 years, including Arsenal as well. But I feel that this year, with how competitive it is, how flat all four sides are mathematically to each other, I think we've learned a massive amount. So we're going to cover all four sides that I've just talked about in this video. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. We'd really appreciate that. We're going to start off with Liverpool. I didn't talk about them winning against Burnley. Probably the most straightforward conversation on this video. They did very, very well against Burnley. Professional performance. Everyone's getting a professional performance against Burnley. With all due respect, they're on 11 points. So if you double that out, they're set for 22 points this season. That's how bad they are. With all due respect to the legend that is Vincent Kompany. There are some big notable changes in the Liverpool setup going into the game. Obviously, Jota featured for the first time in a while, coming back from injury. That's the big one. I know he scored late on in the game, but Jota for me is the one that has to play. Salah's the one that has to play. And the likes of Gakpo, Núñez, Diaz are either a rotational kind of discussion. Should they be playing half the games here, half the games there? Or should one of those players be really trying to nail down a starting position? It's obviously on the left wing. Now, Darwin Núñez has got more pace than Diaz. I think Diaz is a little bit more of a controlled player. You could argue that Diaz is a little bit of a better finisher. But I still think he makes rash choices in link-up play as well, whereas Núñez can sometimes bundle his way across the line and bundle his way into getting a few goals. But he's got that kind of explosive, dangerous physicality that maybe Diaz doesn't quite have. And obviously he's come back from a major injury. It might be a while before we see the full Diaz. So I think Jota has to be playing down the middle. He links up play very well. He's a very cute finisher. And I still think I've always not criticised him, but I've always thought there's a room to go for Jota at Liverpool. Still more big moments to be discovered from the player, in my opinion. So I do think that Jota down the middle makes a lot of sense. He's probably the best finisher that Liverpool have got in terms of in and around the box, little cute finishes. Salah likes to do his big finishes and kind of cuts in from the right. But Jota could be a massive, massive moment in the Premier League title race. Him coming back into full fitness. He's capable of from now until the end of the season, scoring 20 goals in all competitions, in my opinion. So Jota is a fantastic player. Salah as well, and it was a great win against Burnley. Now, obviously, it put Liverpool top of the Premier League title race, and that is significant because Liverpool have been top in recent seasons. They were top in 2018-19 when obviously City won it by 1 point, but Liverpool got 97 points that season. So when they're top at Christmas, be very, very afraid. Be very, very alarmed if you're a rival fan of any of the four clubs that I'm talking about in this video, because they have got the capability to dig their teeth into the title race and never let go. We have to talk about Man City's win against Everton. It was one of the best performances by the club this season. No question about it. Everton have been in absolutely fantastic form. If you take away their points deduction, they're looking at European positions right now in the league. That's how good they've been. And I think Sean Dyche has done an underrated job. To go there and get the kind of win that we've seen from City in the last 4 or 5 years, the away wins where there's a domination of possession and world-class finishes and pure strikes. And the likes of Bernardo Silva, Phil Foden were absolutely incredible against Everton. That was the best performance in the league, I think, this season, arguably. Because if you lose that, obviously even conceding early, it really compounds all the other issues that we've had against the likes of Chelsea, Spurs and Palace and Arsenal and Liverpool. All these big results that haven't gone City's way. If the next one along the line comes just after Christmas, after the Club World Cup, all the success, the Club World Cup is a massive factor in this Premier League title race for Man City. And the reason is it's acted like a bit of a League Cup final. Now, City have won, 4 or 5 League Cup finals under Pep Guardiola. Every time we win one of those League Cups, it feels like it galvanises the side. It gives them a taste for blood. It gives them confidence. Now, playing against Fluminense isn't the same as playing against Everton. Everton are probably better than Fluminense. But go into that final, it's almost like a warm winter break, having a kind of a week off almost, with all due respect, playing lighter opposition. It's almost like a training exercise. And obviously Fluminense were fantastic, don't get me wrong. But I think City will be galvanised by that. I think there's a few players that have come back now. Obviously, there'll all the games that City have to catch up on will be a little bit more condensed. So it will be harder on the legs in that regard in the back end of the season. That might have an issue, especially if someone like Rodri picks up a knock. But for now, I saw that City side look galvanised. I saw that City side look refreshed. And I think the Club World Cup has given City confidence. City are now the champions of the world. There's a special badge that I'm sure you have to pay 59 quid for in Sports Direct to get on your shirt. So I think it's got a massive, massive factor in this title race. The other clubs can't attest to that. The other clubs aren't going abroad and winning Champions League finals, winning Club World Cup finals, winning Super Cups. City know what it means to get there at the back end of the season. I would be very, very afraid. What I'll do at the end of this video, I'll predict the top four. I'll predict the top four. So make sure you stick around to the end of the video. Right, we're going to talk about Aston Villa. Obviously, they're in and around it mathematically. They're currently above Man City by a few points, by 2 points even, with a game extra played. There are moments in the season where you just have to win a game of football. I'm sorry. Man United came back in the second half, were superb against Aston Villa after being 2-0 down. But this isn't a kind of an FA Cup result. This isn't a championship side. This is Aston Villa. They spent hundreds of millions of pounds. Their fans are gassed, and they should be. I'm not trying to discredit them, but we're talking specifically in the Premier League title race. You're 2-0 up at Old Trafford against a side low on confidence, against a side that's getting memed up on Twitter, a striker that's getting memed up because he hasn't scored a goal this season. You have to be better coming out from the back. You have to show more poise. If Man United pick up the ball and their incredible talent that they spent a lot of money on scores an 28-yard volley or something out of this world, which they probably should be doing more of, like Bruno Fernandes scores a 30-yard smash, then that's fair enough. But Aston Villa played their way into trouble. They looked nervous. They couldn't play out at all. As soon as someone like Dendoncker coming in for Tielemans or for Kamara, that was a bit of an issue. I think if you're an Aston Villa fan, I think the quality there, I think he's a decent player, but the drop-off for Aston Villa is so stark. But maybe I'm being harsh because actually it was Diego Carlos that made a few mistakes coming out from the back, as well as Longley. So Aston Villa have got a crop of players, but the way that they conducted themselves in the second half was not professional enough. It wasn't cutthroat enough. I think even if you're having a bit of a wobble, every side has a wobble, trust me. Even the greatest sides in the world lack confidence at big moments in games. But you're 2-0 up at Old Trafford. You can pump it long. You can put all the pressure back on Man United. Just give Man United back the ball by pumping it long, clearing your lines, being simple with it. And Unai Emery isn't opposed to that kind of philosophy. But his players gave up on that in the game. And they played their way into trouble too many times. It was some really poor defending. You can't be conceding 3 goals in a game when you're 2-0 up in the second half. You just can't if you want to win the Premier League title race. So I think it was a damning indictment on where Aston Villa are in terms of winning the league. Can they get top 4? We'll talk about that at the end of the video. And finally, Arsenal. It was pitiful against West Ham. They were one-dimensional. They lacked creativity. They even, I dare say it, lacked belief. I think there was a chasm in the Arsenal 11 in the second half. It was split right through the side between the players that did believe and the players that didn't. And there weren't many players that did believe. I think Declan Rice believed that they could win the game to the last minute. Maybe even someone like David Raya. But don't forget, there's a lot of players that in that 11 that haven't changed, that have experienced the biggest loss in Premier League history in a title race in terms of 247 days, top of the league. I know it gets clipped up and it's memed. I'm not trying to banter anyone. This is just a fact. What does it do to the morale of a football club, to the morale of a side that is largely hasn't changed, if you are compounded with that kind of failure? What does it do? When you're 2-0 down to West Ham and you see your fans starting to leave, that does not look like the bedrock of a side that believes they can win the Premier League title. Now, maybe it's consolidation for Arsenal. Maybe it's a good Champions League run. Maybe it's the FA Cup. But to win the Premier League title race, you have to be fierce. You have to be deadly. You have to be getting goals in Fergie time. There had to be someone in that side that believed that they could have drawn that 2-2. They did last season in multiple games. Remember the Bournemouth game in particular? And it felt far too early in the season for likes of Odegaard, Saka, Martinelli to all drop their shoulders. Trossard looked frustrated all game. I thought he was really poor. It wasn't the worst result in the world. in terms of, Declan Rice had a decent game, Saliba as well. It's not like all 11 of them are shot of confidence. I'm sure they'll win their next game because they'll get back to winning ways. Arsenal have done that under Arteta for many years now. But that was a really poor result. It was really bad. It was probably the worst result of the season, really. To go against West Ham, it's a tough game, and not even show fight, not even match the likes of Kudus, Alvarez, their fight in the tackle, their energy levels at home. Poor result. Really, really poor result. If I had to predict it now, I think City will just about come top with Liverpool very, very close. I think the squad depth for City will be enough. But this changes. I know it changes a lot on this channel, but football changes. Rodri gets injured. City might even struggle to come top 3. I think it'll be Liverpool, Arsenal. And then I think there's a debate if Aston Villa can even do it. I think there's a world Man United go on a weird run. Someone like that, even Newcastle catches up, maybe, even though they look absolutely shocking. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. And make sure you subscribe if you watch this far. Thanks very much for watching.